So psychological, directly we're looking at education and stimulation through training lessons and skill acquisition. So what I was talking about earlier about developing that plasticity and that skill development in the brain, it's going to be a really effective way to start improving that psychological stimulation, something we can directly work with. So adding variety to the training and different skill development, especially in our developing athletes, is really critical. Indirectly, what does this do? Well, it gives them the ability to independently develop new skills and coping mechanisms to process cognitive challenges, especially outside the gym. So we give them the opportunity to develop some of these skills inside the gym, and then it gives them the processing qualities once they step away, perhaps down the track, to process information, uptake information around them, and turn that into outcomes more efficiently. So it's that psychological stimulation element which we can create through skill acquisition, and also those emotional and social qualities through constructive support and social environment, all going to help create that psychological well-being. So in terms of managing the athlete, what does it look like? So firstly, we're looking at assessment, and this involves our goal setting and performance assessment. So goal setting, we're looking more at the psychological, emotional side of things, trying to understand what their why is, what drives them. This might be either emotionally or it might be psychological stimulation where they're really ingrained to achieve something. Our performance assessment is pretty much completely physical. So we're looking at things like our functional movement screen, kilogram biomechanical analysis. For more progressive athletes, we're looking at force velocity profiles, those sorts of things. We're trying to get a physical assessment for where they're at. And during the planning phase, we're looking at providing an action plan and motivational strategies to address the goals that the athlete has identified. Again, this is our psychological and emotional side of things. So we're trying to understand, okay, these are their goals. How are we going to get there? Give them an action plan. Give them a step-by-step process to address this. This specific phase isn't for everyone. Some of our really developing athletes don't actually know why they do it, perhaps because their parents have made them play sports. They were really good at it, so they're still developing their why. Going through the goal-setting strategy can help fast-track that process, but it's also mindful to understand that not everyone's there yet. So this is really for the athlete who's ready for that. In terms of other things, we're looking at strategies, programming, and organisation of athletes training to address their performance. Again, it's another physical one. So we're looking at trying to put in actual training plan that's going to address where their deficiencies lie, which we find from the performance assessment. When it comes to the physical training, we're trying to provide the appropriate training stimulus. So from what we've addressed in deficiencies in the assessment and to what we've written down in our planning phase, we're now putting that into action. And the other part today is we're trying to create the right training environment for the athlete. And this is emotional, psychological, and social. So we're trying to get the dynamics of the group right in terms of who people are training with at what certain times. How people are responding emotionally. So if people are coming to the gym a little bit off, how can we get them up emotionally, ready for the session? And also psychological. So is it stimulating enough for them, or are they just going through the motions? These are all things we're constantly thinking about on the fly in the gym. And, some people think some of the stuff I might do in the gym is a little bit weird, but generally it's because I'm trying to have a positive influence on these three specific categories in terms of emotional, psychological, and social. And generally what you might happen is you kind of got to hedge your bets a little bit and understand that sometimes you might have someone who's full of beans, full of energy. How do you harness that and not necessarily take it away from it, but then try to use that energy to bring someone else into the group? And so dynamically, sometimes the athletes don't really understand what's going on. That's completely fair enough. But as long as you're trying to move these in a positive sense, where you're trying to bring up the lowest person in the room to start getting a little bit more emotionally ready and psychologically ready, then that's what we're trying to create, is that overall training environment. And then we have our checking in. So checking in, as I touched on last week, we're looking at management and mindset meetings. So it's going to be really effective for emotional, psychological, and social elements, where you're giving someone one-on-one time of day. So someone who might be feeling slightly isolated or something really benefit from some access to this one-on-one attention. We can start to understand the emotional needs of the person a little bit better if we're feeling a little bit distant from just the training environment, and also get an understanding from where they're at psychologically. So what's their mind doing? What are they focused on? Where's their motivation at? It's probably the best way to do it. It's probably also the most aggressive. So it's our last tool in the shed. If we can, we're going to use things like warm-up conversations, check in with the athlete, get an understanding for where they're at, get a sense for where their head's at. And if we can do that consistently enough, generally we don't need to go into the management mindset meetings. It's kind of like a shock method with training. If we don't really use the higher adaptation, we won't. We'll save that for when we need it more sort of desperate times. If week after week after week, you're just not getting a response from the athletes, might be time to bring them in for one of those management and mindset meetings, bit of a reset, bit of a recalibration, and go from there. And then we also have a constant rolling program review and data analysis. So with the online program, we're able to access guys' weights and get it constantly rolling to make sure they're moving in a positive direction. And that's completely physical. We're just getting a physical assessment of performance. So they're the four main methods we use. Assessment, work out where they're at, both physically, psychologically, motivationally, and physical readiness. We go through the planning phase, understand how can we address it according to this athlete, and then put specific physical training plan together. The actual training is ongoing rolling assessment, session by session, making sure we're giving them the right physical training, but also creating the right training environment, and then checking in, making sure we're staying on top of them, making sure we know we care about them and that we're there for them and that we're trying to help them with their goals. Lastly, guys, some resources. So with a lot of this stuff, because it's not traditional strength and conditioning, coaching, sports science stuff, it's a little bit, there's no real direct path to go down. These are some resources and books I found really helpful to help me fast track my understanding of these concepts. What I suggest as well, though, is that everyone has a different personality. So everyone develops these qualities slightly differently, and you can't really learn more than just by coaching. Just putting yourself in different environments, different stimulus, different social groups, outside your comfort zone, and start developing these social skill sets that are going to make it so much easier for you to develop these skills going forward. With that being said, though, guys, if you're looking for somewhere to start, The Art of Communication is a really simple read, very practical takeaways by Australian author Rick Rushton. Conscious Coaching by Brett Bartholomew, which I'm sure most of you are aware of, a US strength and conditioning coach. Those first two guys I've been able to work with personally. Rick was actually a sports coach of mine as a junior, and Brett's been one of my mentors over the years. And I can vouch for both of them. Really good resources, really good philosophy. And the reason I'm so big on those two resources is that, generally speaking, it's where a lot of my concepts have come from. And so if you're sort of spending time within our program, that's a really nice sort of complementary resource. Start with Why by Simon Sinek is an absolute no-brainer for anyone that's struggling with motivation or purpose or direction, both for athletes or for yourself, understanding which direction you want to go to, motivation, that sort of stuff. The Happiness Hypothesis is a slightly different one. The title's a little bit so-so, but it's a really good assessment of literature and rationale for what helps people emotionally and psychologically and what drives people's motivations. And some really good research and really good information in that, just to give you a better awareness of social, mental, psychological health and well-being. The Laws of Human Nature by Robert Greene. Robert Greene's got a few texts, which some of you might have come across over the past. And that's quite a big text, but a really good sort of synopsis and summary of who we are as humans in terms of biologically, what is our construct and structure. And I'm not going to be able to say this right, but Kurzgesagt, in a nutshell, is a YouTube channel, which is actually fantastic. They've got a whole bunch of different stuff. You could spend hours on there. I suggest you don't. But just have a look at the human stuff. There's some really good psychology videos that are based off peer-reviewed literature, which just explain basic emotions, psychological well-being, different thought processes and stuff, which really help conceptualize not necessarily just our thoughts, but human nature's thoughts as well. Some of them are really short, really useful. Have a go at that. See how you go. We'll cover off some more of the practical stuff in the workshop. Hopefully you got something out of that, guys. It was a good refresher from the stuff we've gone over. And we'll see you on Friday.